What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. This is episode 96. I'm one of your co-hosts, Simon Boyanos.
I'm your other co-host, Mazen Austin.
And today, we're going to talk about more big boys here. We're going to talk about interior defensive linemen. And so, last year, just so that y'all know this, last year we kind of just put defensive linemen and edge rushers together. That's not what we're doing this year. And so this year we're going to separate edge rushers. And so that's outside linebackers, defensive ends, guys who mostly play on the outsides from interior linemen. And so everyone on this list are guys who mostly play on the interior of their defensive line. Like sometimes, they might line up on the outside. Maybe they're a 3-4 end or something like that. But for the most part, they do operate inside here. And so we got defensive tackles on board for our top 5 class of 2022 Colorado defensive tackles. So there you go there. But without further ado, Mason, do you want to go ahead and get this started and talk about our number 5 guy in the state of Colorado?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm going to go ahead and start talking with our number 5 guy. He's 6'3", 280 pounds out of Columbine High School. His name is Trace Williams Mitchell. I just want to say this guy, he's 6'3", 280, but he's definitely a dog with his power being unmatched. He has a great awareness in the field. His frame and size, 6'3", 280, that's a good size for an interior lineman. His play recognition, I think, is one of my favorite things to watch for this guy. If the run is coming up the middle, he's able to just, take it out, depict it, make the move, get across the face of the defender. His run stopping is definitely good. And I would say power rush wise is probably where he is the best in the pass rush game. Like coming up the middle, he can power rush like nobody's business. I feel like this guy definitely has like a great, head on his shoulders when it comes to, his power rushing skills and what he looks at. And he definitely watches film. I can see his IQ definitely being up there with how he can recognize a play, depict it, and take care of it. Do you agree with that, Simon? Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd have to definitely agree with that. I think Trace Williams Mitchell was a big part of this Columbine defense the last couple of years. Columbine has always had a good defense. And, that defense usually stems or starts with, your interior lineman with the trenches, right? So that's how important the defensive line is to really any defense, especially this Columbine one. And, Trace Williams Mitchell out here, he was just able to really control, that center of the line and whatnot. And a lot of those guards, of opposing teams and, really get them to go where he wants so that, linebackers could go ahead and fill up those gaps and make a play, and so he was definitely a big part of that. I'm going to go ahead and actually talk about some areas of improvement here, if you don't mind, Mason.
No, go right ahead.
So, look, he has great size. He's 6'3", 280. He has great power here. He has really good power here, I should say. But I think definitely his biggest issue is that he's a little bit slower, agility-wise and speed-wise. Obviously, you don't have to run a 4.4 to play D tackle, but you got to be pretty agile in between the tackles and the hash marks and all that to go ahead and make plays. And I think comparatively to everyone else on this list, he's definitely the slowest guy here. I think because he's so strong, he is able to kind of get away with a lot because he could just manhandle guards and kind of force the flow of the play to go the opposite direction and allow somebody else to make the play here. But there are also, mostly in the pass game, there are also times where, he's just too slow to, kind of make a huge impact here, especially getting after the quarterback. I'm definitely most concerned about his pass rushing moves now. At defensive tackle, I wouldn't say it's extremely important to be a great pass rusher, but if you want to play on the next level, you have to be good at a lot of different things. And I think that's where he's lacking the most here. He does have some moves, here or there, but it's not. First off, it's not like the biggest variety, anyways. He has maybe one or two. I think I saw a swim and a rip. I think that's it. Then there's a couple power moves thrown in there where he's just controlling the interior lineman or the blocker in front of him. But other than that, nothing too crazy there. And even then, I think he has very powerful hands. I think that's a big part of his game. But his hand speed is definitely a little slow. I think on the next level, there are some guys that could give him a little bit more trouble. And, when you have a defensive tackle that's just straight up neutralized on every pass play, then, that kind of limits how much playing time they could get. And, maybe it kind of just means that they're more of a nose tackle, like throw them in there in goal line situations and against the run, but then you have to immediately take them out. Or, they're just not as effective against spread, type of teams or pass first type of teams. And obviously in this day and age of football where you got to pass it all the time, you just can't have that. You can't have players that you need to take out in passing situations because they're not as strong in that ability. And so if I'm Trace Williams-Mitchell here, I would definitely focus first off on, improving that hand speed. I think that is definitely something that he could realistically work on this offseason and kind of get to the point where, he could hand fight with the best of them. And then, just working on that agility, man, like that sideline to sideline, hash mark to hash mark, I should probably say, type of agility speed. You don't have to run a 4.4 like I said, but you got to be able to close gaps quickly and, be able to be a threat and collapse that pocket a little bit quicker there. Mason, is there anything else you want to add on to that? Like I said, I think he's a fantastic defensive tackle against the run, but his biggest weakness is definitely in the pass game.
No, I 100% agree. I think that if he could get a couple more pass rush moves in the bag, he would definitely be able to, up his game to that next level. And I feel like if he was just that much better on pass rushing, he could probably make it a little bit higher on this list. Because, he definitely's got the intangibles, he's got the size, and he's definitely, a solid pass rusher on this 5A level. And, and he's not someone to be, thought of as weak or anything like that. So I definitely agree. Do you want to go ahead and talk outlook for him?
Yeah, no, for sure. And, even though we were pretty critical of him, the bottom line is that he's still a pretty big body. And if you're a college team, you can never run out of big bodies, honestly. The more, the better. The more guys you could kind of throw into that rotation, the better. And for Trace Williams here, he really is kind of finding that groove. And, he's at this point, his game's to the point where he could fit in a lot of different systems just as a run stopper. And I just want to throw this out there. He does have a 3.7 GPA, was all conference, all state. Most recently played in the Blue-Gray All-American game, so congrats to him. But he does have a couple offers here. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about the most recent ones. There were a couple D2s. So when are we recording this? Well, we're literally recording this on December 30th, so the day before this episode drops. But basically, on December 2nd, he got 3 D2 offers, actually. Wait a second. Yeah, 4, D2 offers here from some pretty good programs, University of Sioux Falls, they offered him. Missouri Western State, they offered him. I'm pretty sure they have some of the best facilities in D2. They're renowned for that. CSU Pueblo, they offered him. Fort Hays University, our boy Kale Cormani, he played quarterback and safety for Rampart last year. He's over there and he loves it there. But they offered him on December 2nd as well. So he has a slew of D2 offers right now. He does have one D1 offer, at least that I can see, from Air Force. He got that on November 17th. I also believe Air Force just won their first bowl game. So there you go. And so he has a good amount of offers. He has one, at least according to his Twitter, he has one, he has one D1 offer and then a couple, D2 offers to some pretty good quality programs that have very strong cultures and definitely invest a lot of money into their football programs too. But as of right now, has not committed just yet. Now, Mason, I want to ask what you think about these offers, and what kind of level of a player is Trace Williams here in your opinion, and what's his outlook moving forward?
Yeah, so for me, I think that his level of competition that he's going to be striving in is the Division II level as of right now. But I think he could make it on the D1, but he'd be competing every year. With every prospect that gets brought in, he'd be competing for his job, but I think he could get it done. And I think that, from what I've heard and everything, he has a pretty decent drive going for him. So I'm definitely gonna, strive towards, if he wanted to take a D1 offer, if he has one, he can make it work. But I think the best bet for him would be taking a D2 offer, or maybe, JUCO's not a terrible thing to do. I like the idea of going to JUCO, going into the transfer portal and coming over. I see daily all over Twitter, all the coaches saying there's so many players in the transfer portal. It's very easy to go JUCO and then D1. And if he is dead set he wants to be D1, I say take a JUCO offer. But if he, is cool with playing and just, getting school either help paid for and just wants to play ball, he's going to strive at that D2 level. Do you agree with that, Simon?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think he could play D1. I think Air Force is kind of right up his alley. Air Force, more, I would say maybe Mountain West FCS type of schools would be kind of up his alley. I could see him as somebody who could, get some playing time relatively quickly, maybe after their redshirt year or in their second year, depending on what's going on at the program. But he would probably be maybe more of a rotational guy, and that's okay. I mean, you're not putting your body on the line out there for a whole game and whatnot, but you're still making an impact and being a part of a team. That's always a good thing, but I could definitely see him more as a rotational type of guy, like a consistent rotational type of guy on a lot of D1 teams. On the D2 level, I think he would be the guy on a lot of these teams. I'm looking at Sioux Falls, Missouri Western, CSU Pueblo, even Fort Hays State. Those are competitive D2 teams. They're almost always in the conversation for, being the national champs and whatnot. Now, they definitely invest a lot into their football programs. And so, if I'm Trace here, I would definitely take visits to those D2s, because, no offense to Air Force, but some of these D2s might have better programs and facilities than some of these D1s, and you got to think about quality of life. I guess you don't always do college once, but being not a pro athlete, but being a college athlete, on the next level, you want to be treated right. You want to feel like you're wanted there and whatnot. And I feel like at those D2s, he would be the guy out there and probably get playing time pretty quickly and not be as much of a rotational guy as the main dude out there. And there are ways to the NFL from the D2 level. I know there are a couple of D2 linemen actually. I know there's one from CSU Pueblo. I think it's Ryan Jensen. Could be mistaken. But he played in the Super Bowl last year, and so there are ways going, to the NFL from there as well. So I would just make sure to, really look at your offers because he has some good ones. Missouri Western, Sioux Falls, those are some good schools, man. If they're giving you as much money as they possibly, or as much money as they're willing to give a defensive lineman, that's a pretty good quality of life. Fort Hays as well, that's another good one. They go all out for their football program, and so I think that's kind of the range he's at right now. If he does want to go to an FBS type of school, I think JUCO would help him out a lot, just giving him more time to work on those pass rush moves. But he has some good offers right now. And he might still be getting offers here soon. Like I said, his most recent offers were from about a month ago. And so, as signing day approaches, you could see maybe some schools deciding to pull the trigger as more and more players verbally commit. So we'll just have to see about that. But Mason, is there anything else you want to add on before we move on?
No, I think I'm good. I do want to say before we get too far into this episode that if any of these guys wanted to come on and like talk about our film breakdown or have any questions or anything, they can definitely, set up an interview with us. Just, hit us up on the socials.
Boom, there you go. This is your automatic, if you make this list, this is your automatic offer to come onto the show. So there you go. But I think that's it. But yeah, Trace Williams-Mitchell, big part of that Columbine defense. He's going to be valuable to a lot of college football programs for sure. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back to our number 4 guy on this list.
How's it going, and welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. You are listening to the top 5 interior defensive linemen. I'm going to go ahead and talk about our number 4 guy out of Regis Jesuit High School, Jaden Franklin, 6'1", 310 pounds. And I want to start by talking about just that pure, size. The 310 pounds is huge for a guy on any level, for a defensive lineman, especially the interior guys. I think he honestly, he's definitely has like that Vince Wilfork-esque type of manner to him. He's decently fast for his size, but he uses his size to his advantage. I think, one of my favorite things that I saw in his film was when he was like, there's a play where he gets blocked by 2 or 3 guys, and he uses his size to kind of leverage himself through the line, and it was just a pure athletic play, and you don't see that at that big of a guy very often, especially on the defensive line. He reads the plays extremely well for a defensive lineman. Like, coming off the line, he distinguishes if it's a pass or a run, like, instantly off the line. The second that he makes his decision, he commits. And, even if he makes a mistake here or there, I'd rather someone commit 100% than not commit at all. I think, honestly, his IQ is a huge statement for this guy. His football IQ is up there just by the way he can dominate at the line. And, his size helps, but his IQ is where I see him, best fit for it. Do you agree with that, Simon?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Jaden Franklin, one of the biggest parts of his game is that he's just so smart. Like, there are definitely times where you could see that he diagnoses plays, as they're happening and whatnot. He's not going to get fooled a whole lot. He's just a very solid defensive tackle that you like to have in the interior because, he knows what he's doing, right? Like, he's not going to get, misdirected so easily. So yeah. But, Mason, you mind if I talk about some things about Jaden Franklin here before I talk about areas of improvements?
No, go right ahead.
Bet. So, honestly, Jaden Franklin, I think his game is very similar to Trace Williams-Mitchell, but I would give him the edge because I think he is definitely a bit more powerful and stronger than Trace here. And I think part of that as well is because he's able to get leverage, get his hands on those blockers just a lot more consistently and in better spots than Trace, and that kind of just allows him to manhandle blockers. And he does that a lot, and even when he doesn't, when it's like him getting double teamed, like he'll take on the double team, and because he's so strong and because he knows where to place his hands, he'll hold the double team and push them back even then. And so he's just a very powerful, football player, period. Throw in, his IQ so he knows where he's going, knows where he wants to go, and he just allows, the players around him to make a lot of big plays. If he's not making them, then somebody else on that Regis Jesuit defense is going to make it happen. But I think a lot of the credit does go to Jaden Franklin because he did do a lot of the, honestly, in my opinion, a lot of the dirty work for Regis Jesuit. When you look at the film, you see him redirecting guys and just completely shutting down lanes, and it's all on purpose. As a pass rusher, I do give him a little bit of an edge over Trace here, just because he's a little bit more powerful, and I think he moves just a little bit faster than Trace here. And so Jaden actually, in my opinion, moves and collapses the pocket a little bit faster and gets quarterbacks kind of panicking up in there. And so that's what I like a lot. That's definitely one of the things that really separates him from Trace here. But with that being said, let me talk about some areas of improvements, because I also think that they have very similar, like, I guess, concerns or areas of improvement in their game, honestly. And I think with Jaden here, he's just not the fastest or most agile guy. And when he goes up against teams that like have more of a zone blocking scheme, or more of a scheme where linemen are moving in directions and there's a lot of pulling and stuff, and the flow of the blocks are like going like more side to side than anything now, rather than just straight up the middle or on trap plays. He definitely kind of gets lost in the sauce just a little bit there. Like, you could see the line moving the pocket or moving, along with the running back and whatnot. And Jaden, he's just not fast enough to like get in there and disrupt it. He kind of just gets lost in that flow. He's pushing the guy back, but if it's a stretch play, he's not going to be able to get up in there. Unless the edge rusher, really sets the edge and redirects the running back to him, which does happen from time to time. But even then, I think that is definitely a testament to his agility. He can be a little bit faster here, be a little bit more agile, and really like, disrupt plays. And so that's kind of something I really noticed there. He just kind of gets lost up in it, especially on those stretch plays, when the line is moving, or in passing situations where it's like a rollout or a boot, and the line is moving, and he just gets lost up in it, and so that's kind of a big problem there. If you're a offensive coordinator and you see that, like, hey, they got a dominant defensive tackle that could cause pressure from the middle, but once you move the pocket like left or right or whatever, like that automatically neutralizes him. That's something that I think a lot of OCs look at and they're like, okay, that's what we're gonna do. I think Valor did that against them, which was a very smart, and that kind of showed there. And so for him, just work on that agility, continue to work on that hand speed as well. I think he has very powerful hands, like probably stronger than Trace here, but it's definitely a little slower, just by a little bit. And so if he continues to work on that, get off those blocks quicker and whatnot, so that, it helps out his lack of agility and he could get to the play faster, that'll definitely hide some of those things there. Mason, what do you think of that evaluation of Jaden Franklin?
No, I 100% agree. And yeah, I did watch that Valor game. I watched the film from the Valor game, and yeah, anytime they wanted to go away from him, which they did a lot because they know how dominant he is up the middle, they just moved the pocket. They would just rush outside, and they got a dominant rusher over there and some dominant offensive linemen. So they have two of our top 5 guys, one on each of our top 5 offensive lineman lists. So, they definitely got some dogs over there on the line. And so they just ran behind him and put him to the outside every time. They run behind Makula a lot over there, or Michaela over there. And, they would just run it right outside of him every time instead of going inside like they normally do. So I definitely agree with the status of he needs to, side-to-side movement. If he could get that down, he'd be a force to be reckoned with.
Oh yeah, and you saw in that game as well. He went up against Caden Parrish, who was our number 2, I think, interior lineman in the state. And Caden, the biggest thing with him that we criticized him for was that, he's just not as strong as a lot of the other guys. Like, everything else is great, fundamentals and whatnot, gets good leverage, but when it comes to raw strength, he's not there. And so when there were times that Caden Parrish had to straight up go one-on-one with Jaden Franklin, like north and south, Jaden Franklin would dominate him, quite simple. But like you said, when they move the pocket, have Makula as the, lead guy, Parrish, he just has to move and block. And he's perfect at that because his fundamentals are great. You saw when that happened that he definitely got the edge on Jaden Franklin a lot more. Would you agree with that?
Oh, no, I definitely do. Caden Parrish is there's a reason he's number 2 on our list for interior linemen, and he's a smaller guy, but his fundamentals are just like perfect. Like every single movement he makes is perfect, and he puts a lot of time to that. And that's where, he really dominated over Jaden Franklin in that game. So I definitely 100% agree on that one.
Yeah, and that's a scheme thing, That's just a scheme thing. But that being said, Jaden Franklin is still a good player. I think he's somebody that a lot of teams could use. And so let me go ahead and talk about his offers here. As of right now, I think I only see two, right? Yep, two that he's gotten. One of his offers he just got yesterday, actually, on December 29th. So congrats to him. But let's start with that one. He got an offer to Black Hills. Is it Black Hills State? Yeah, Black Hills State, home of the Yellow Jackets. I know a lot of Colorado guys go there. I want to say that's a D2 if I'm not mistaken. And then he's also received an offer to Dakota State. Really interesting, which is an NAIA. He got that offer, I think that was last week, actually, last Friday. So at the time of, when this recording's coming out, it would have been exactly a week since he got that first offer. And so the offers for Jaden Franklin are rolling in right now. You saw his first one last week. He literally got one yesterday. And so I just want to ask you, Mason, what do you think about Jaden Franklin? What kind of level of, or I guess what kind of level can he play on? And what offers do you think he deserves or should take?
I think personally, he's a big body. And like you said, you can't get enough of big bodies, especially on the D1 level. I think he could technically play on the D1 level. Size-wise, his raw talent that he has right now and his raw athleticism, schools eat that up, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a D1 take a shot on him. But I think he'd be, he'd come in for a couple plays, go out for a couple plays, and, he'd redshirt about probably 2 years to get him into that where they want him. I think at the D2 level is where he's going to strive. I think he's definitely that guy for a D2 team. I don't think he'll, I don't know. I don't think he'll, be a day one starter on the D2 level, but he's pretty close. He's probably going to get some snap times his freshman year as a true freshman if he wants to. Or they could offer him, the redshirt year, and then he could get to that next status and get kind of brought into that D2 level. Do you agree with that, Simon?
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely agree with that. I wanted to ask you, what do you think about him potentially getting playing time on special teams, whether that's field goal block or punt block?
No, actually, yeah. I kind of like that, the special team stuff. You see it in his film if you watch it. He definitely is on special teams a lot for his squad. And so, he might get snaps as a true freshman on any level, because of his size and stuff on that. So, special teams is definitely a way that you can make it into any school and make it into anything, long snappers get drafted into the NFL for just long snapping. So, I could definitely see him, getting snaps probably as a true freshman for that on any level.
All right, say less. Yeah, I would have to agree. I think Jaden Franklin should probably get a lot of the same offers that Trace Williams is getting. I think Jaden Franklin is just I like him a little bit more because I think he's stronger straight up and a little bit faster, not by a mile or anything, but he's definitely faster, right? And so I think, same deal with him, if he could get an FCS offer, I could definitely see that. I would just probably consider him more of a rotational type of guy, which is fine because I kind of feel like most D1s rotate their defensive tackles anyways. It's rare that you see any that play them for more than 80% of a game, unless they're just absolute studs, and they just kind of keep them out there. And so, plus that also depends on the scheme. So there you go there. But other than that, I think on the D2 level, he would dominate, and he would be the guy for a lot of these teams out there and be important to their defense, just like he was with Regis Jesuit. So yeah, there you go. Mason, is there anything else you want to add on before we move on?
No, I think that's all we have to say for this guy.
All right, there you go. Also, just for the record, most of these guys are from the 5A level, with the exception of one. But we'll talk about all that in honorable mentions later on in the episode, so stay tuned. What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm going to go ahead and talk about our number 3 defensive tackle in the class of 2022 here in the state of Colorado, and that is Legends' very own Luke Sandy. Luke Sandy, the 6'2", 285-pound defensive lineman / offensive lineman. I think he's getting looks at both. But for the purposes of this episode, we're going to talk about him at defensive lineman. So with that being said, let me go ahead and talk about a lot of his positives here, the things that we really like, the things that separates him from other defensive linemen on that list. So right off the bat, and I'm just going to say it, I think he's a very good overall lineman. He has a lot of moves in his bag. A lot of pass rush moves, block shedding moves. Like, he's somebody that could beat you a couple of different ways. On top of that, he does a good job of getting leverage, and this allows him to manhandle linemen from time to time and move them with some pretty powerful moves there, and so, when you have that along with, his ability to, just block shed, basically, you got a defensive player that could make a lot of havoc happen. Another thing that I really like about him is his hand speed. Compared to at least our number 4 and number 5 guy, they're definitely like a step up. Like, they're just pretty fast as well. And I already talked about, his ability to get leverage. And so that kind of allows him to have a little bit more power as well, when he's hand fighting and whatnot. And this just honestly prevents a lot of blockers from getting their hands on him. I think he's just a very good player with a lot of good skills here. He has a lot of power and strength. I don't know if he's as strong as a Jaden Franklin or a Trace Williams. I think I would probably put him maybe just below Trace by just a little bit here, but he definitely has some power, and a lot of that is made up, because of his ability to block shed in a variety of ways, and just his ability to get leverage a lot of the time. So he doesn't need to be the most powerful guy straight up. But other than that, he moves pretty well for somebody that's, what's he at? 6'2", 285, 281. Whatever. He's in a very good spot there, and he just moves a lot better than Trace or Jaden Franklin, and he doesn't get kind of lost in the pocket getting moved or some outside zone type of plays. Like, he'll get up in there because he's a pretty good athlete overall, but altogether, I think he's just a very good overall defensive lineman that does a lot of things for this Legend defense. Mason, is there anything else you want to add on to that before you talk about some areas of improvement here?
No, I definitely want to say, the only thing I want to say is I just want to second the fact that, he gets it done for this defense time in and time out. I think that, he's definitely a leader on that defense, if that makes sense. Like, he wants to be the best he can be, even if, it's not always there for him. So he definitely gets it done. But going into some areas of improvement for this guy, I think working across the face of a defender when they get position on him is something that he needs to, kind of strive to get a little bit better at. And I think that comes with his hand fighting. I think if his hand fighting was a little better and he could kind of fight off that offensive lineman, getting the grip on his, shoulder pads, I think he could probably, move across the face a little bit better. His athleticism is very good, but his speed isn't. So, he gets up to speed fast, but he's not that fast for, his size. He could probably, strive to get a little bit faster. And I think that also comes with his footwork. I see a lot of false steps when he's going through the line. He takes an extra step when he doesn't need to. If you cut that out, you take that 0.5 of a second off of making a play. His awareness is really good. His size is really good. But I think in the pass rush, he has no pass rush moves. He's a pure dominant, run blitzer. He just tries to bull rush every time. He has 1 or 2 pass rush moves you see him do here or there, but not very effectively. They're not very clean, They're not like our edge rushers that we're going to be talking about eventually, his pass rushing is just not there. So I think if he got better at any of those, or all of those at the same time, I feel like this kid could be dominant on any level with his size. Simon, before I talk about, his outlook, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think Luke Sandy against the run, that's definitely his strength. You know, he could definitely pass rush better comparatively than Trace and Jaden Franklin, in my opinion, but definitely could use a little bit more work. He could probably develop a little bit more of a bag there. You know, I know he does have a couple more moves. I mean, you know, as many moves as you can have as a defensive lineman or defensive tackle, but, you know, that could definitely be improved on. Also, I mean, this isn't the biggest deal, but he is kind of a little bit lighter. I know he's listed at 280, 281, you know, but that's definitely a little bit on the lighter side, at least comparatively, or at least if you're comparing that against, you know, Jaden Franklin, who's definitely 310, maybe a little bit more, and Trace Williams, who's at 280 as well, but he seems a little bit more built at 280. And so, I mean, like I said, that's the strength part coming into it. I just don't think he's as strong as Trace or Jaden. So yeah. But go ahead and talk about his outlook here. Talk about his offers and all that stuff.
Yeah, so to start, you know, he is a very dominant offensive lineman as well. You know, he was in contention for, you know, the top 5 list there as well for a tackle. So I don't know how many of his offers are going towards offensive line and how many of them are, you know, purely his defensive line. But definitely for, you know, Luke here, he has an offer from Valpo University. They're a D1 school. Did you say they're FBS, Simon?
Nah, they're FCS.
FCS, okay, yeah. And then Washburn University, which is a D2. I know he has both of those offers as of right now. Personally, I think that he is a D2 guy if he goes for defensive line. As of right now, I think at the D-line position, because of his speed and, you know, all of his, you know, fundamentals not being 100% there, D2 is where he'll probably sit if he's going for defensive line. But, you know, at offensive line, I think that's more of where that Valpo University offer came from. But at the same time, I think that he could probably get it done there on the defensive line too, but they would definitely redshirt him a little while. Do you think that's fair to say, Simon?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, you know, he's still on a very similar level as Jaden Franklin and Trace Williams. He does do a couple things better, but it's not like he's like way above them, you know. And I mean, this is something that we kind of see a lot in recruiting. In case people don't know, but you know, colleges like recruiting like nasty defensive linemen. They also play offensive linemen because you bring a little bit more of that edge, you know, to the offensive side. And so if you're a good defensive lineman, then you could be an even better offensive lineman. I'm sure that's what Valpo sees there. And Valpo is a very good FCS program. I feel like they're almost always in contention for that FCS championship, national championship, pretty much every year. And so, you know, if he does commit there, they'll be getting a good one in Luke Sandy. I think, yes, he can probably play, you know, defensive lineman on the next level. I would say he could play FCS, you know, as a defensive lineman. Like I said, maybe more of a rotational type of guy, but he's definitely a little bit more developed in some areas, and so he would be closer to kind of breaking out of that rotational role than I would say some of the other guys on this list that we already talked about. But as an offensive lineman, I think he could be developed really well over there as well and be a legitimate, you know, D1 FCS starter maybe in his second or third year. So, yeah. Does that feel accurate?
No, yeah, it definitely does. I think he could definitely get it done, you know, no matter where he goes. And I think, you know, as long as he bets on himself and he does it correctly, you know, no matter where he goes, he'll end up, you know, striving for greatness. So, you know, I guess bet on yourself and get it done. Is there anything else you want to say before we, you know, take our break and go ahead and talk about our number 2?
Nah, not too much here. I mean, he's a good defensive lineman. A lot of these, I know these first 3 guys we talk about, you know, they're kind of really close to each other. I feel like that's real accurate. You know, if one of these guys did 1 or 2 things differently, then, you know, that could result in a change, you know, in the rankings. But they're still pretty close because they're pretty similar players as well. Moving on up, though, I mean, our top 2 guys, they definitely do a couple things here that significantly separates them from other guys. So, yeah, but coming up next, we'll talk about it.
Welcome back to our top 5 list for the Playmakers Corner podcast. Our interior lineman with the number 2 position for us is Bo Dowdy, 6'2", 245, out of Arapahoe High School. So I just want to talk about, to start, his size isn't what got him on this list, this high. It's his awareness and his IQ when going through that pocket. He makes the perfect read within a split second, and he takes that chance. I think, his IQ is kind of off the charts when it comes to what his intangibles are. And that's also shown in his footwork, which I think is, kind of a bonus that he gets to work with, some great other defensive linemen over there at Arapahoe High School. But, his footwork is there. In the run game, he doesn't make the wrong read. If he's said to, hit this guy in this spot, he hits him in that spot. Where he lacks in strength, he definitely makes up for it in his athleticism because he is fast. As he should be. He's only 245 pounds. He should definitely be a lot faster than a lot of these guys on this list, but he definitely does that. I think that for him, he doesn't have the wow factor that some of these other guys have, but I think his wow factor is the fact that he doesn't make the mental errors. And I think that's fair to say. Don't you think so, Simon?
Yeah, no, for sure. He plays very, very good within that system over at Arapahoe. He's part of the reason why they're so dominant this last year on defense and consistently got pressure on the quarterback and shut down the run and just completely controlled that line of scrimmage all year. That was their bread and butter. So, no, I definitely have to agree with that there. Is there anything else you want to add on before I talk about his game and some things that he could definitely improve on here?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add is that, in the hand fighting game and his hand movement and the way he fights off, the offensive lineman's hands, he does like a very, very good job to keep those offensive linemen off him. And I think that kind of comes with, his size because, at that size, a normal offensive lineman, like a big guy, is going to, dominate if they get their hands on you. So him being able to keep their hands off there is pretty, like on another level. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Is there anything you want to add, Simon?
No, yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, for somebody that's definitely smaller than all these other guys, really everyone on this list, because he's the only one that's not at least 280 pounds, he does a lot of good things here in the interior, It's not like he's completely neutralized when he's up in there. And he's playing on the 5A level in the Centennial League, so you got like 300-pound guards and centers all over. I'm thinking about Grandview, I'm thinking about Cherry Creek for sure, Hank Zelinskis over there, So he's going up against these type of dudes, and he's still getting a very good push, and so that's a lot of credit to him, I personally also like his play recognition. I think he's a pretty smart dude out there. Obviously, it's pretty easy to play with 2 D1 edge rushers who are very good on either side of you. And so, everything is basically funneled up to you, but it still does take some, you got to have a good IQ to be a good player. And one play that specifically stands out is where I'm trying to remember who it was against, but I think maybe it was Cherokee Trail, I want to say, but basically they called a screen pass. All the other linemen, all the edge rushers on the line, they basically rush up, but kind of like you could see it for a split second there. But Bo Dowdy definitely recognizes that, the linemen are pulling away and that it's a screen pass. And so he automatically redirects over to the running back and he shuts that down pretty quickly there, hitting him in rhythm so that that play doesn't go anywhere, and so that's kind of a big testament to his IQ. But really with Bo Dowdy, the only thing that I'm most concerned about, the thing I think he could probably work on the most is his weight, and his power as well. I think those go hand in hand because he is only in the 240, 245 range now. Right now, I don't think he could play D1 or maybe even high-level D2 as an interior defensive tackle at 240 pounds. I think if he wants to play interior lineman, he has to go to a JUCO. But if he goes to a JUCO, takes his time there, and I'm sorry, I'm talking about outlook real quick here, but I'm just saying, if he does go to a JUCO, takes his time there, he could be an extremely dominant defensive lineman. And so there's a lot of potential here. You got to realize, because he does a lot of great things at 240 that a lot of these other guys do with 40 pounds on him, and he weighs 40 pounds less. And so I think really my only concern is his weight and his strength on the interior. I think maybe he could play some D2, maybe closer to NAIA D3 potentially, because of his power. And I think that's definitely a thing that's, kind of holding him down, But other than that, I think if that's where he wants to go, he could do that. But he could also play maybe defensive end on the next level, and then that doesn't matter at all. But really, that's my only thing about about Bo here. He's just really light, and I think on this level he did a good enough job where he could still be an impact and whatnot, and not just completely get neutralized. On the next level, it's just going to be different. You don't have 240-pound defensive tackles out there on the FCS level or FBS level. But Mason, what do you think about that before you go ahead and talk about his outlook here? Which I know I already started, but go ahead.
No, I 100% agree. My biggest thing for him is his size. If he could up his size, gain 30, 40 pounds, he could be dominant on this defensive line. As long as he keeps, he doesn't do it unhealthily and lose all his intangibles, But going into his outlook, I would definitely say, right now he has no offers. I think he could play at a low-level D2 to start. But personally, I think he would, be better off going to a JUCO for like 1 or 2 years, gaining the weight, getting the instruction from that great coaching staff that you're going to get over in a JUCO, and then moving to, he could go D1 at that point. If he wants to play D1 ball, go to a JUCO. If you don't want to play D1 ball and you just want to, play in college, go to a D2. But you're not going to go to, a CSU Pueblo, those higher up D2s, and that's just because of his size. That's the only thing holding him back. If he wanted to keep at his size, I would say he'd have to move to like outside linebacker, maybe an edge rusher, that type of status to keep that and still play at a high level on the D2 level. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely agree with that. I think, if he does go to a JUCO, I think he's an FBS guy coming out. Absolutely. I don't doubt that at all, because everything else is great. Hand fighting's great. Speed is great. Frame, he's not like the shortest dude. He's still 6'2", 240. That's kind of the base you're working with, and so that's not bad at all. Good speed and agility. He gets leverage a lot, which allows him to, kind of a battle against those bigger dudes out there, and so you don't have to worry about strength that much outside of the weight. And plus the play recognition is up there as well, like for sure. And so I think with all those things combined, Bo Dowdy here is, I think, in my opinion, he's up here at number 2, mostly. Well, not mostly, but a lot of it is potential. He does a lot of great things right, though. Don't get it twisted. Last year, I'm pretty sure we put Spencer Hardy at number 1 for defense. We put Spencer Hardy, who was an interior lineman, but when we were doing defensive players, we put them all together. I think he was one of the top interior linemen, and he was at number 2. He would have been at number 2 for interior defensive lineman, and he only weighed 220 pounds back then, but he was just like a mini Aaron Donald out there. I see a lot of that in Bo Dowdy, except he's bigger than Spencer Hardy by like 4 or 5 inches and like 20, 30 pounds, And so, just because you don't weigh the most doesn't mean that you're not going to be like, a little bit higher on this list, because I do think Bo Dowdy does a lot of things right. Outside the weight, which is not like, it's not like the biggest deal. There's a reason he was still getting in there and causing havoc for that Arapahoe team and gave a lot of teams trouble, to be honest with you. So, there you go. But, Mason, do you want to talk about his outlook, though? Kind of. I mean, he doesn't have any offers right now, so JUCO's the way, right?
Yeah, I definitely think JUCO's the way. And I did
Okay.
look up that play that you were talking about because I remembered the play you were saying where he did it, and it was against Cherokee Trail that he
Okay.
read the screen. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think JUCO's definitely the way.
Okay, yeah. So we'll kind of just leave it there. JUCO's definitely the way. If you get a D2 or an FCS offer, definitely consider those. But in our honest opinion, I think if he does take a little bit more time, like 2 or 3 years, because you can redshirt on the JUCO level, then he could be in a really good spot and definitely be a force on the next level, whether it's FCS or FBS, and be a very solid starter there. So, yeah, there you go. But coming up next, we're going to talk about our honorable mentions, because we have a lot. And then we're going to talk about our number one defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman in the class of 2022. What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. This is episode 96. We're talking about interior defensive linemen, defensive tackles in the class of 2022 in the state of Colorado. And our number one, we're going to kind of hold that for a minute here and talk about some of the honorable mentions here because there were a lot. Like I said, a lot of these guys were 5A, 4A type of dudes. I'm just going to say this right now. Our number one guy did play on the 4A level, which is different from the other guys who played on the 5A level. But there is a reason why he's number one. We'll get to that later. But for now, I just want to shout these guys out because there's a lot of them. Tommy Tatham from Meade, he was another dude that was definitely in our consideration there, but barely missed out. Will Knight from Durango, he's up there. Tanner Hoffman, I don't think he had any film, so we couldn't necessarily look at that. Layden Wright, Brant Jarvis, Hagen Hofschneider, Joey Pearson from Coronado, and then a couple a couple 1A guys here, Mohammed Ibrahim, I think, and then Eli Wysensi from the linemen were some guys that we were considering for interior defensive linemen. There are a lot of them. There's always a lot of them. And then Jesse Weber from Harrison. He is another one that we were considering. So a lot of guys in consideration, but just barely missed out on the cut here. But that being said, let me go ahead and talk about the number one rated interior defensive lineman here in the state of Colorado in the class of 2022. And that is no other than Vista Ridge's very own Justice Laulu, the 6'3", 295-pound defensive lineman / offensive lineman. I believe he's also a 3-star, if I am not mistaken, as well. The only ranked player on this list officially. So there you go. But let me go ahead and talk about Justice here. I'm not even gonna lie, I've talked about him a lot whenever talking about Vista Ridge, either in the preseason or, talking about him throughout the season and his impact because, this dude is on a whole nother level. Yes, he is 6'3", basically 300 pounds, but his athleticism is definitely above and beyond, I would say, a lot of these guys on this list. For somebody at 6'3", 200 pounds, 6'3", 300 pounds, not only does he have fantastic power and strength, like very natural power and strength there, he moves extremely well. His agility is right up there, he's not going to get lost in a stretch zone blocking scheme. If anything, he's going to go ahead and chase that down and blow it up. High key, if he wanted to, he could probably play linebacker on the D2 level and be an absolute monster out there, which would be unfair. But, I'm just going to throw that out there because that's how fast this dude is as well. Speed-wise as well, you see him tracking down some guys in the backfield and, geez, dude. When there are plays where a running back or a skill player, is off to the races, there are times where you see Justice track them down, and you got to remember, he's 6'3", 300 pounds. He's a literal lineman tracking down skill players on the 4A level, by the way, which is absolutely insane. And so, as far as things go, that separates him from other guys on this list and the entire state. At 6'3", 300 pounds, he's an absolute athletic freak. You don't see this every day. I mean, you can't teach athleticism and size at the same time. You just can't teach that. And Justice, he's right there. I mean, he's somebody that looks like a D1 player and will be a D1 player. And then last but not least, I just want to throw these in there, before I throw it over to Mason here. But I would say this year he's definitely worked on his hand fighting, pass rushing, block shedding moves a lot. And it's noticeable. If you look at his junior, sophomore film, I mean, you see him kind of he's more so just overpowering dudes up the middle, and that's fine because he does that anyways, and then tracking guys down. He does that a lot, This year he's definitely refined some of his moves, and you see that when he hand fights with, offensive linemen and dominates them. I know he did play Palmer Ridge, and so he's going up against the Monument Moving Company, and so I'm sure he had some matchups against Alec Falk and Jackson St. Aubin, both guys who, Alec is our second-rated, I think, tackle in the state of Colorado, the class of 2022, and then Jackson will probably be up there as far as interior offensive lineman goes. But, he battled against them, and he gave them a little bit of trouble out there because he had a little bit more in his bag outside of his just raw athletic ability and size. And so that's definitely something that you love to see. You love to see the improvement there. You love to see him just going to work at his craft, right? And just getting better there. And so all those things combined, I think Justice really is just scratching the surface of his potential here. I mean, obviously he's a big dude who's athletic, but now he's developing a little bit of a bag here, and that is definitely something to look out for. Mason, is there anything you want to add on here before you talk about his areas of improvement?
Yeah, I did want to add a couple things, man. I just wanted to say that he takes amazing angles. You don't see that a lot in a lot of defensive linemen where they'll take an angle and they'll cut, the offensive line and stuff in half to try and, get flat down the line. And he's just a dog. He has, he's a first step every time is downhill with force. He blows people off the line. He has quick hands. He has a lot of moves. Power rush moves. But going into some areas of improvement, like you said, he's getting a lot better at all of his stuff, But I think his biggest flaw for me, what I saw, was his pass rush moves. Just he didn't have a lot in his bag. But he's definitely getting better because, I've watched his junior film, and he didn't have barely any, and now he has some. So he's definitely putting in the work, and he knows what he needs to work on. But I wanted to throw out a couple of his statistics. He has 30 solo tackles, 1 fumble recovery, 78 total tackles, and that's all that Vista Ridge has put in. But if you look at his sacks, he has 5 sacks on the year. As an interior defensive lineman, that's a decent amount. And his tackles, just solo tackles, is 30, 48 assists, 78 total tackles. This dude gets to the ball every time. And, on that defensive line, that's kind of what you need. You need a dog like that. But yeah, working on just his, I guess it comes with his hands, his hand fighting, being able to, dip and rep a little smoother, go over the top a little smoother, use those pass rush moves that, he'll learn. It just takes time. That's all I really have to say. Is there anything you have to add before I talk outlook for this guy?
No, not too much. I would definitely agree. I think Justice, look, first off, I'm gonna give a little bit of a backstory here. I gotta give a little bit of a backstory here, because I've known about Justice since last year, and that's because I used to be a PE teacher over at Falcon Middle School, and Justice actually went there, and so my teaching partner, Coach Cates, was very familiar with him. I actually got to teach Justice's little sister, by the way, so there you go, back when she was in the 6th grade last year. She was online, though, so But other than that, I knew a lot about Justice there. Like my old teaching partner would tell me a lot of stories about him, how great of a dude he was. So that's definitely a plus to, his character and, his recruitment, obviously. But how great of a dude he was and how dominant of an athlete he was as well. Because I also knew his wrestling coach, Coach Grimaldo, rest in peace. He did pass away earlier this year. But, Coach G would just talk about, like, man, Justice, he would just flip a boy over and just sit on him. And that's it. That's the match. That's the wrestling match. That's it. And so for a lot of Justice's, like, I guess, athletic career up until this year, I mean, he's definitely been able to get by just being a dominant, like, big dude. I remember, like, his old wrestling coach used to say he had to cut down to 280 back in middle school. Like, just think about that for a minute. Like, he had to cut down to 280 after football season, to get in shape for wrestling. And so, with that being said, I could definitely imagine that Justice definitely got by on a lot of his athletic ability, for a lot of his career. But more recently, he's been developing a lot of the little things, which is awesome because that's what you love to see. You have to be good at a lot of the little things if you want to make it to the next level, whether it's making it to the next level as a college athlete or as a potential pro. And, a lot of the guys at Falcon middle school, still potentially sees Justice as like, hey, if anybody's going pro, it'd be Justice Laulu. So just going to throw all that out there. He is a raw athlete, but he's getting a lot better, and he does have a good work ethic, on his shoulders over there. Also, I'm just going to throw this out there before we get into Outlook as well. He might play offensive lineman on the next level, which I could see as well. If you listen to what I said earlier about colleges loving to recruit nasty defensive linemen to play on their O-line, he definitely fits that bill. But Mason, do you want to talk about where he has committed to? Because I think he's the only one on this list that's committed right now. He's signed on early signing day and whatnot, and talk about what his outlook looks like from there.
Yeah, no, I can definitely talk about that. He is the only one on this list that is committed, and he put 100% committed just the other day on his to Eastern Washington, which, if I'm correct, Simon, that's the Big Sky Conference?
Yes, sir. They basically almost always run the Big Sky. That's where Cooper Kupp is from.
Okay, yeah. So he, he's going to a good school over there, like definitely a good school over there. And, personally for me, I think that he's going to not start day one. He is going to a very good school. I think that he probably gets redshirted his freshman year, and they're going to decide whether or not right then and there they're going to decide offensive or defensive line for him, because I think he could play either side of the ball with his size and speed. Then he's going to hone in on the craft, and I feel like he gets snaps his second year. Third year he starts. What do you think, Simon? Does that sound about right?
No, I definitely agree with that. Eastern Washington, I mean, they always recruit really well, especially from that Washington area where there is a lot of pretty solid defensive linemen out there. I'm not even going to lie, like just big dudes like Justice. And so, I mean, but in general, they always recruit well. There's a reason they have dominated the Big Sky a lot throughout this year. Like they're the real deal. They're high-key a team that could beat. They could beat down on a lot of. I would say on a lot of FBS team. Actually, did they beat Washington? UW? I think they did.
Here, I'll look real quick.
No, go ahead and look at that. And so, with that being said, I mean, I would have to agree with that, And by the way, it's not like you have to play all 4 years of college. You're still on scholarship, so it's fine, But go ahead and take that redshirt year, develop, right? Not only your game, but also, I mean, you're in college now, so get used to your college classes. Take as many of the easy ones as you can, just so you get that out of the way, so that you have less college classes to take while you are, getting actual playing time, and then you kind of go from there, right? And so, man, UNC really made no effort to get Justice, though, huh?
Yeah, I guess they didn't, and they really should have, because, this guy is going to a school that beat UNLV, Central Washington, Western Illinois. Then they went and won Southern Utah, Montana State. They beat UNC 63-17. Idaho, Weber State, Montana State they lost to, and then they beat UC Davis, Portland State, Northern Iowa, and then lost to Montana in the FCS second round of playoffs.
How bad did they lose to Montana State by? I'm just wondering.
Montana State 23-20.
Dang, Montana State's in the FCS National Championship, by the way. So
it wasn't like it wasn't close.
Yeah, no, Eastern Washington's good. Justice is just the type of guy to go to Eastern Washington too. I remember watching plenty of UNC Eastern Washington games, and would love to have some of those players come to UNC, but I don't know. I guess McCaffrey doesn't recruit that far south. Also, their defensive coordinator listens to this sub podcast, so I don't know how he missed out on Justice here. But regardless, congrats to Justice. He's going to go to a program that has a legitimate shot at going to the national championship. Probably all 4 years he's there. 4 or 5 years, if he redshirts and whatnot. So he's going to have a chance to, potentially, get some a national spotlight. I mean, they already have one, but, a bigger one on that next level in the playoffs and whatnot. And I think he's just the type of guy to fit that Eastern Washington culture over there, if I'm being completely honest with you. Like, very tough defense and just, like, gritty, hard-hitting type of dudes, And so, yeah, I mean, there's no hurry to get onto the field. You'll get there when you get there. Just continue to work on the little things, because that's always what's going to matter, and yeah, there you go. Justice Laulu, our number one interior defensive lineman in the class of 2022 here in the state of Colorado from Vista Ridge High School. Mason, anything else you want to add on before we kind of wrap this thing up?
No, all I want to say is that I think every single one of these guys is going to do great at the next level. And again, if any of them want to come on and say, what's up, or have any questions about how we break them down, I can show them the list, whatever they want to look at. And I definitely think that all of these guys are on that next level, and I'm going to be happy to, look at like a Justice Laula in a couple years and see what he's doing up there at, Eastern Washington.
Yeah. Do you think he's an NFL guy?
I mean, if he hones in on his craft and does it correctly, like you said, Cooper Kupp came from Eastern Washington and went to the NFL. So, I'm not going to take it out of the page. And I think it also, I think it really depends if they put him on offensive or defensive line and if he hones in correctly.
Okay, fair enough. I don't doubt that he will, by the way, because he's going to need to if he wants to start. So there you go. But all right, fair enough. All right, well, with that being said, I'm just going to go over our top 5 list right here. At number 5, Trace Williams Mitchell from Columbine. At number 4, Jaden Franklin from Regis Jesuit. At number 3, Luke Sandy from Legend High School. At number 2, Bo Dowdy from Arapahoe High School. And then our number 1 interior defensive lineman in the class of 2022 is Justice Laulu from Vista Ridge High School here in the Springs. Represent. So there you go. But if you're listening to this podcast, thank you so much for supporting us. We appreciate all the support from all of our fans. This will be our last podcast that we are dropping in the year of 2021, because we're literally dropping it tomorrow, the 31st. So happy New Year's from me and Mason, and, I guess Cody. But from me and Mason primarily, thank you so much for rocking with us, not only on this episode and, this last season, but, throughout this last year. We've grown so much, and so we're super appreciative of that. Going into 2022, we have a lot of big plans ahead. We're looking to stream and whatnot, have a little bit more face-to-face interaction. Well, it would be online, but, live interaction. So there you go. And, a lot of big plans for Colorado football and women's flag football. Keep an eye out for that. That season's just around the corner here. But with that being said, go ahead and, continue to follow us, show us some support on all of our social medias. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube as well, at Playmakers Corner. go ahead and drop us some good ratings there and some good reviews. We appreciate that. And, speaking of good reviews, give us some good ones on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. We appreciate those. So yeah. But with that being said, I have been your co-host, Simon Villanos, a.k.a. Coach V.
And I am your other co-host, Mazen Austin.
And peace.
Peace.